everyone, welcome back to the NAS Metal Producer channel here at YouTube. Welcome to another end of the decade list. For today's end of the decade list, I'm going to be doing something very different. Instead of trying to come up with separate videos to focus on these two genres, I've decided to basically combine these two genres into one video, which is basically me talking about my three favorite stoner rock albums. Again, not enough to do at least 5 albums. If I had 2 more, at least I had heard or listened to. Because I mean, I know I could have went and listened to what about some of the ones I downloaded off of Bandcamp. However, since I don't have a whole lot of time for that, and I know everyone would love for me to at least span this throughout February, but to be quite honest, I don't have a lot of time for that because of, well, I want to move on to other stuff. So without further ado, I'm just going to at least talk about my 3 favorite stoner rock albums. Then I'm going to move on within this video to then talk about my 4 favorite stoner metal and doom metal albums. So, without further ado, let's see if I can successfully pull this off. So, let's get into my 3 favorite stoner rock albums. So, coming in at number 3 is, even though I just said that I wasn't listening to a lot of my Bandcamp releases, I'm making an exception for this one, because when I discovered this album in 2017, I definitely liked the sound quite a bit. These guys are based out of Argentina. This, of course, is Chaka, which, of course, with their first full-length album titled Respo Sangre. Well, when you think of stoner rock, you definitely think of something that's a little more sludgy, or almost, I guess, also kind of similar to what's playing in the background, which I'll get that album here real soon. It definitely has that almost, at times can push for almost psychedelic stuff. Here, this one takes a lot more influences from the early 70s bands. I mean, you definitely can hear the influences from like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. Of course, I mean, those are probably the 2 bands I really can come up with, and it's just, again, it definitely at times leans more towards the hard rock side, but it definitely has that almost like stoner feel to it, just that it's a little more higher register due to the tuning of the guitars and so on. And of course, the recording, it definitely has that 70s feel. It definitely sounds like it could have been released in 1974. It's just great stuff. This album, again, was released in 2015. About 8 songs, sung in their old native language, Argentina. Just great stuff. Nothing bad on here. It's fantastic. So, Respo Sangre at number 3 by Chaka. Now, coming in number 2 is the band, of course, I just just a little bit mentioned here, just as far as the music, is Owl with Screech. Between the 2 full-length albums that this band had released in the 2010s, their very first album was self-titled and was released back in 2012. This was their follow-up album to that album released back in 2014, and to me, this is my favorite of the 2. These guys, of course, are from the United States, but it doesn't matter what town or city they're from. What really matters is the music here. This is just fantastic stuff. Again, it's stoner rock, but it definitely has more almost proggy and psychedelic, and has almost definitely garagey feel. Definitely a throwback to bands like the Amboy Dukes and, of course, early Blue Oyster Cult. Just great stuff. Just nothing bad on here. Just probably one of my absolute favorites on here is Devil's Lake and Whiskey Town, of course. Atlantean Key, Chromatose, all good stuff. So, there at number 3, Screech by Owl. Now, that was number 2. Finally, number 1, my number 1 favorite stoner rock album of the 2010s is the debut full-length album from Brazilian stoner psychedelic proggy rockers, Blind Horse. And yes, this almost you can say is psychedelic stoner rock. Because again, while it definitely, again, it's with that, but again, these guys really show their inspiration for bands like, of course, Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath, and of course, even the Doors, for also, and Led Zeppelin and those kind of bands. Just, it's like if those bands got together and basically jammed. That's what you kind of get with this album, and it's just great. And of course, the very last track might be the one where I would say definitely takes some influence from krautrock in many ways for some reason. But again, that just from the times I would listen to them. I mean, when I'm in that mood, this sound still I still pull out, and of course I obtained this physically last year due, of course, Blasquez, the guitar player of the band. Just great stuff, because by the time when I did get into this album, it was only digitally, it was through Bandcamp, and again, around that time, I did do a review for it. But since then, this album is just fantastic. It's really just become one of my favorite albums also of the 2010s. It's just brilliant stuff. Also, the very first track, which is the title track, is basically clocks in at 15 minutes and 51 seconds. It's definitely the longest song on this album, but it's fucking brilliant. There's just nothing bad on here. Great stuff about, at least, again, only two songs on here that are sung in Brazilian. There's just only about two here, but it's all fantastic stuff. So there's my number one favorite album, the one favorite stoner rock album of the 2010s. So fantastic stuff. Finally, that at least ends the stoner rock portion of the video. It's time to get into the stoner metal or doom metal portion of this video. So I've got about 4 albums here to talk about. So let's definitely see if I can successfully talk about these 4. So coming in number 4 is a EP, but it's a great EP, and of course it's the last thing that this band had released, which of course is The Gates of Slumber, with of course the Stormcrow EP, which was released back in 2014. This was of course the last thing before the band split up due to, of course, bass player Jason McCash would quit the band, but then sadly after that would then pass away. So, however, though, it seems like since then, I had to do this video again because I was just fucking up and everything in terms of information, I went on the Metal Archives to kind of, at least mostly with the bass player, because the last time I mentioned that, I got the names wrong, which I'm not going to go too much into that. Anyways, when I did, it seemed that the band is back together, which again, just under Carl Simon and co. Anyways, so this wouldn't be the last thing in this list from Carl Simon. Well, I'll get to that one. Anyways, this is just a fantastic 4-track EP, though technically for an EP, for the at least time length, this is actually 30 minutes, so it's definitely one of the longer EPs. And of course, this is straight up doom metal. It's sludgy. It's also very slow in places. Definitely taking a lot of influence, even at times from Candlemass. I don't know if you can hear, but it definitely has that Black Sabbath influence, that's for sure. Saint Vitus and maybe Pentagram, that kind of stuff. It's just fantastic doom metal. There's just nothing bad on here. Death March is just fucking great. I mean, it just starts it off just hard and heavy. Just good shit. So, there. Stormcrow from the Gates of Summer at number 4 here. So coming at number 3 is the only album I actually physically own from this band, even though this ain't the album that turned me on to these guys. This, of course, is the first album that High on Fire released in the 2010s, even though these guys were around since, of course, the 2000, of course. Don't have to really talk much about, what's his name here? Kind of already forgetting the guy's, Matt Pike, who, of course, starred in the 90s with the band Sleep. I think it's that. Anyways, this is a straight up stoner metal band. But when it comes to High on Fire and their brand of stoner metal, this shit almost at times very pushes it towards thrash. This is basically, if you were to really kind of consider this, thrashy stoner metal, I guess you can say. But there is plenty of doom metal influences on this album for sure. Definitely slow parts. Again, almost similar to like the Gates of Slumber album. But this is just brilliant shit. It's just good. Whether or not this is the best album that High on Fire released here in the 2010s is debatable. But since this is actually the only one, and I didn't really buy any other album from them, which is actually crazy, though this ain't the album that turned me on to High on Fire. It was actually Blessed Black Wings, which that's a fucking good album too. But Snakes for the Divine, is all I would say is just as good too. It's just rough, raw, and heavy. That's the best way I could put it. And of course, Matt Pike's vocals definitely has that almost Lemmy-ish feel to it. I mean, definitely you can hear some of Motorhead's influence in High on Fire sound. Just great stuff. There's just nothing bad on here. Again, I could have also thrown this in my thrash metal list because of just how fast and heavy this album can be at times. It's aggressive, but it definitely at times I don't know how much it would fit with there. But for a stoner metal album or doom metal album, this is actually still worthy of here. It's just a fantastic album. Just nothing bad for within the sound. Just great stuff. So there at number 3 with Snakes for the Divine from High on Fire. Again, released back in 2010. Now, since of course I talked about the Gates of Summer, and I of course mentioned that it won't be the last time I'll talk about something released by Carl Simon. This will be the first thing that Carl Simon had released since the split of the Gates of Summer. This of course is his band Wretch. And you could say this is definitely nothing more than a tribute and I guess you could also say a farewell to, of course, the late Gates of Summer member Jason McCash. I mean, the song, which is Rest in Peace. Actually, no, it's actually, was it Running Out of Days? I think that might have been the song. I think it's either Running Out of Days or R.I.P. Of course, Rest in Peace, I think, are definitely were in tribute to, of course, Jason McCash. But this is another great doom metal album. It's just great. And of course, it also has a killer cover of the rather criminally overlooked Judas Priest song Winter, which of course was taken straight from Judas Priest's debut album Rock'n'Rolla, and it just fits within this. They do a fantastic job of covering Winter, but of course they live up to the tradition of having the song spanning or transitioning into the track Icebound, which is, it seems to be always something, I guess, with the song Winters, to have it at least transition to another track, and they did it with their song Icebound, which again, just another so slow, dirgy fucking doom metal song, and it's just fantastic stuff. Relatively short though for now, but goddamn, it's just fantastic. There's just nothing bad on here. So again, this was released back in 2016. I thought it was 2017. Oh, you know what? I think I might have already corrected that anyways within the video on the year date. So, anyways, this is number 2 so in the list here for my favorite stoner metal or doom metal albums of the 2010s. So the self-titled debut from Wretch, of course, they released an EP also since then, and nothing else. And the EP is also fantastic too. Has a great cover of, I believe it's Sweet Revenge by Motorhead, if I am not mistaken. I can't remember, but I thought it was a Motorhead track. I could be wrong. But what's my number 1 favorite stoner metal, doom metal album of the 2010s? I'm going to break the tradition. I'm going to take the handcuffs for a little bit and actually plug in an album that I didn't get to buy at the time, but I did listen to it and reviewed it by the time it was released, on the year that it was released, and it definitely is a great fucking album. It's the second album from dual Witchbanger Texas stoner metal band, and it's another fantastic album. I mean, you probably might be seeing the cover here, and it's just great stuff. There's just nothing bad on here. It's like, what, 34 minutes, but goddamn, it's a complete ball to listen to. It's at the speed of a fucking tank. It basically steamrolls through, and it's just fantastic shit. Raw, heavy. I mean, compared to at least what stoner metal is, this is very energetic. This is definitely almost has a lot more classic metal influences, but also definitely has some more 70s hard rock influences too. I mean, I made some comparisons to volcanic rock from the Australian band Buffalo. It just has that feel. It's just great shit. I don't have to talk too much about it. I mean, was it 8 songs on it? It's just good stuff. There's just nothing bad. The title track is great. It's heavy, dirgy shit. Just just from what you want to at least expect from a very much high energy stoner metal album. So there's my number one favorite stoner metal or doom metal album of the 2010s. Which, of course, Witchbanger from Duel, and of course, they had released an album last year, actually, which would be their third full-length album, but I didn't get around to listen to it, which is kind of a shame. But who knows, at some point, I'll probably end up buying the 3 Duel albums anyways. Again, they had released 3 in the 2010s, and just great stuff. Of course, the drummer of the band, of course, was in the Texas 80s metal, occult metal band, Ripper. So, with that, this was an interesting way to put these two genres together. Instead of just doing separate videos for these two genres, I had to, in a way, combine them, and I would say it worked out fine. It definitely wasn't 5 albums, or was it 8 albums, nor was it 10 albums for these two for these genres. But you know what? It's perfect enough. It gets out of the way, and I definitely kind of shows I definitely do like these two genres quite a bit, or at least these genres in general. So, without further ado, let me know what were your favorite stoner rock or stoner metal or even doom metal albums of the 2010s, even if you are one of subscribers that do like those genres. So without further ado, let me end the video and say I hope y'all enjoyed. This Every Thrash Shed Sam out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone. I'll be getting back here with another end of the decade list. Maybe Friday. We'll see. We'll whenever this gets on what day. Maybe Monday, depending. We'll see. Take care, everyone.